Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Winning Mindset Academy podcast. And as I've said to all of you that I will be bringing to you some really interesting people, some amazing people that I've met in my life that have inspired me in what they've done, even in a short time or even in a longer period of time. They've all had a story to share. But as you know, under the Winning Mindset Academy, it is all about not just winning in the traditional terms of winning, but it's deeper than that. It's an in-depth way of facing adversities and then coming through on top, but it's never an easy ride. And I know a lot of us have been there before. So I have such pleasure in welcoming a lady called Tiffany Cherry today, who I've met only a few years ago. We were both on the board of Brilliant Women Global. And a position that I really cherished because of what it meant. And when I met Tiffany, of course, she made a great impression on me. And at that time, she was a sports journalist and she worked in the football arena. I'm going to let her tell you more about that. But she comes with a whole lot of different backgrounds in her life and a very interesting person. So without any further ado, welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you, Philip. Wonderful to be part of your fabulous podcast. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. I know that we've been trying to get this on the road, but you've had to battle flu and you're finally ready to go on live now. So I'm really appreciative of your time. Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah, no, but yeah, flu means a different thing these days, doesn't it?
It does. It does, exactly. We're afraid to sneeze in public.
Yes.
But anyway, Tiffany, thank you for your time. We'll start off when I met you at Brilliant Women Global. Can you tell me a bit about what you were doing during that phase in your life, which was probably before COVID? So it was around 2019, wasn't it, when we went through that?
2018. I was, as you mentioned, working in the football space, working for the AFL club. I was there on a 3-year contract with, which was associated also with the Victorian government, rolling out a program called This Girl Can Victoria, which was taken from a very successful program in the UK, which followed on the back of the London 2012 Olympics, which in a previous job I had actually hosted the Olympics for Australian television, which was a dream of mine many years back. So I was very aware of the success of the Olympics and how it got a lot of the population of the UK moving, and then this moved into the arena in Victoria. So I oversaw that and linked in not only Richmond and thought about how I could improve their memberships from the perspective of engaging more females, which every football club wants to do, to their subsidiary business, which is Aligned Leisure. So they moved out of, mostly at the time, they still had one pokey left. I was sort of very vocal in trying to say we don't need any, but obviously I'm not the person who counts the money. But they moved into Aligned Leisure, which really aligned well with their business, which is obviously all about football, but about the community and their fans and making sure that they're happy and healthy, as well as obviously the people working within the club. So that was a great experience. I'd never worked for the government before. Frustrating at times because as a journalist, I'm used to working on a story and seeing it come to fruition that night. With the government, there's a lot of red tape, but it taught me a lot of things as well. And I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. And along came our mutual friend, Joseph, and Joseph Garley had asked me to join this concept that he was putting together, which was Brilliant Women and Brilliant Women Global. And then obviously we formulated the board, and that was a great experience, really talking about how we could get more women engaged in the corporate arena or corporate and beyond. But it was all about looking at the barriers that were there and trying to guide and to help and to coach or, train, mentor women who wanted to move up the corporate ladder into the boardroom or the executive level, and how to do that, and also to be a forum where opportunities came by, we would be able to introduce them to those.
Absolutely, yes. It was it was a wonderful mission and a project, and then and Joseph Galley and I met through another organisation where we were both in the leadership space, and he was a member of that particular board directorship, and that's how come we met, and of course how we met then. And he invited me on the board as the only male, which was quite an honour actually to be part of that. Because of my background in the women's world, and also my whole appreciation and respect for gender equality, diversity, and inclusiveness was the basis of why we were all there. You mentioned earlier there were some challenges and difficulties in that role. Can you elaborate on some of those challenges that you faced?
That particular role, look, there's always challenges in roles. I think more looking at it from the perspective of so the red tape, I think people are pretty much aware of that. That's just more about processes and systems, something that different processes and systems that I had been used to. But going back, I think more my background prior to that had been in the journalism space. I actually started out as a physiotherapist with Richmond Football Club. I was the first female ever officially allowed into the change rooms. Right. To get that job, I had to give the then coach a massage to prove I was strong enough. So you can imagine that would make front page news now, but that's how I had to prove myself. And I got the job. I was told by my two male colleagues, one being the doctor and the other the head physio, just they knew my massaging skills, and they were like, just absolutely go as hard as you can. So to the coach's credit, he didn't let out a scream, but he was certainly I don't think it was comfortable. Anyway, I got the job, and that was a great experience. And from there, I then gave away physio. I had to do that because I really, really wanted to move into the journalism world. I couldn't get a job because I didn't have a job. I didn't have the experience, but I couldn't get the experience because I didn't have it. So it was this circular thing that I had to break. So I went away in 1996, and I was an athlete. My partner happened to be none other than Catherine Freeman. And and I also knew a lot of the other athletes who were in the Olympic team. So I just went away with my dictaphone to Atlanta and went around to a couple of the news organisations and said, I can get some interviews for you. I didn't have any accreditation, but these were my friends. So I did interviews and I would play them. I'd call reverse charge in the phone this booth. This is before mobile phones, really. And I would play back my interviews down the phone. Pretty amazing back then. That wasn't, it's not that long ago. No. 25 years. So, and then from there I came back, and the story goes, I applied or spoke to 100 people, and no one would give me a job. And then I had a tiny little opening actually through Bruce McAvaney, who I'd met through Catherine, and he was such a wonderful, generous man, and about what I wanted and how he got to where he was and what he did to prepare and all that. So I had this sort of time with him, and through that there was a job going at Channel 7 called Talking Footy. It was just a little job once every, actually it was once a week, but then I got the role and they weren't quite sure whether I could do it. So they employed a male to do the other week. So, and he and I ended up becoming good friends. So I did one week, he did the other. Right. And that, and I love that because I'm all about, I think it should be male and female, it doesn't have to be male and it doesn't have to be female. Yes. And we worked really well together because then also, if one of us was sick or whatever or couldn't go, which was very rare, but obviously the other person could step in. So from there, I just gradually increased my experience, and then I came back. I'd come back, and then I went interstate and worked at a regional network, and at one stage was working 10 jobs, and I think 4 of them were paid and they were all casual, so they were nothing. It was just, I worked 10 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 years, pretty much to try and break that cycle of not having the experience to get that experience. And then finally I was, so I went from regional Victoria, which was in Prime News in Albury, and then I got a job at Channel 10 in Sydney, and then from there I was offered a job to come back to Melbourne at Channel 7 News in the sports department, and I was the second female ever employed within the sports department, and the first in 10 years. Wow. And And my boss, who was my boss, so he'd been there for about 10 years, and he was my boss for about 2 hours, and he got the sack, not because of me, but he was ousted. And so then the next person came in, was not so embracing. And so it was a pretty tough initiation. Obviously, I'd returned to Channel 7, but in a different department. And that was, an experience in itself. And then Fox Footy started, and the guy who was launching that rang me one day on a weekend and said, I want to have a chat with you, and offered me the opportunity to be, one of the 4 new faces of Fox Footy. And I was starting up a brand new channel. It was going to be 24/7. And I'd had a scholarship at CNN a couple of years prior, and had been over there for a month, living and breathing what it was like in a 24-hour news network. And I loved it. It was like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, being in that candy store. But for me, it was just heaven. I could work if I wanted to, 20 hours a day if I wanted, in all different departments. Not that I did, but I worked a lot of hours. But I just soaked up all the experience. And then when this opportunity came about, I knew that this was for me. And so I left Channel 7 and started up at Fox Footy, and the journey continued.
Wow. I'm just listening in awe. I mean, man, there were so many things that you've attempted in quite a short period of time. Like, you were moving pretty quickly. But while listening to you, I was picking up some things there which probably shows the sort of person you are, right? I mean, you seem a very determined person. You don't give up easily. And I'm going to ask you some deeper questions very soon, because there's a few messages in there that you skimmed over a lot of time very quickly. But we're going to delve in a few areas of, obviously during that time, it wouldn't be too easy, because you said, you were very much the minority as a woman in the footy world. Going back in time, you said you were a physio, right? I mean, that's exactly what your profession. But are you? Did you do any courses or any degrees in journalism yourself?
No, I didn't. So I basically did my own cadetship. I looked into it. I mean, prior to getting into physio, I actually was in year 12, and the journalism course at RMIT at the time, you had to sit an entry test, and then I don't know, before they even offered you the position, but because I got the marks to get in, and you had to sit that, and then there was another test, and the other test was going to be during schoolies week, so I deliberately flunked the test because I wanted to go to schoolies week. So I went into physio, and which was actually the best thing that could have happened. So I was in physio. It's a 4-year course, and I loved it. I started up my own business. I worked in a hospital. I worked with AIDS patients. There was a lot of stigma associated with it. I worked with, old people and elderly, a hospice, and I taught people how to walk and talk and feed themselves and go to the toilet. And I used to sit and listen to these amazing stories from these old people who just had a beautiful story to tell, and they didn't have people around. So I would, sit or I'd walk and listen to them, which is sort of part of my journalism training, really. Without really knowing at the time. And as I said earlier, the physio, when I was at Richmond, I loved the team feeling of that. And it was just it was one thing that I really, really missed. I loved helping people, but, the team environment of that club back in 95, 6, 7 was just a fabulous experience for a female, because other women in the medical fraternity of the AFL, but very few. And as I said, I was the first at Richmond. So, so some amazing experiences along the way.
Fantastic. Tiffany, what do you, all right, in life we say, it's about 2 things that usually happen in the success of people, which it just comes. One is timing, and the other one is the people you know. It's quite interesting how these things do play out in journeys of people, including mine as well. When I look back in my time, the people I knew and the timing that I was there, obviously you need to be putting in the positive effort and energy, and they need to see the qualities in you. But if you come in the right place at the right time and the right people notice you, you go to the next step.
And I just add to that, I also think determination is the other very crucial, because you could be what you think is the right place at the right time, but overlooked and give up.
Okay.
And I was overlooked many times. As I said,
Right.
getting into journal 99 times before there was one slight sniff of an opportunity, and I grabbed it and I made the most of it.
Yeah. And that's it. That's where a lot of people give up before they get there. It's about keep on keeping on. It's about believing in yourself and saying that this will happen, even though you may not see anything at the end of the tunnel. But it's that self-belief and determination, knowing your values. And finally, it happened. And talking about winning in that respect, how would you align that to actually winning? Because that was just a step that you took, all right? And then what happened after that?
I think it's, again, when you are knocked down or knocked back, you always learn something about yourself, and others around you learn something about you. And so, for example, when I started, in journalism, I was given what I called, I'm about to swear here, so I used to call them the shit jobs. So I was a female, and I got all the bad jobs, all the ones that, the men in my cohort, my colleagues, were like, nah, they didn't want to do it. It wasn't good enough for them, whatever. So for a lot of those times, though, I was working with the young footballers or the young athletes coming up the ranks, the ones who people at the time didn't really care about, the ones who, they were overlooked because it was always about the stars. But they became stars, a lot of them. And I, developed and fostered great relationships with these, and friendships with some of them, with these sports people, not just in football but other sports. And I helped them because I saw them in me. I saw them trying to get somewhere like I was trying to get somewhere. So I would push their story and push their barrow. And there's a great story. I will just digress for a second, but I was told by my then boss at Channel 7, we've got wind that Greg Norman's coming to town. It was for one of the Australian Open or whatever it was. And he's flying in on his private jet. You've got to go out to Essendon Airfield. You've got to go now. That's general here. Okay, so we go. And we're miles away from where we've seen the plane. So, yep, great, we're getting it. No other journos around. Great, we've got the exclusive so far. And we're filming through the bar, through the fence, a kilometre away, not a kilometre, 800 metres away, like miles away. And then suddenly a guy or a person in a golf buggy starts driving towards us. And we're like, oh no, we've been caught. Oh, yeah, we're done. We're doing anything bad, but we're done. Yeah. And then my cameraman said, I'll just keep filming. I said, that's all right. So the guy comes up and he says, oh, Mr. Norman says you're welcome to come down and have a chat with him. And I nearly fell over. I was like, what? Wow. The cameraman's going, you ripper, let's go. So he said, yeah, come on down, but on one condition. And I said, whatever condition that is. And he said, on one condition, there's a young man with him who is Australian, who's flown in. You must also interview him. And I said, absolutely no problem. So we're there and we're filming, and we've got Greg up in the hull of his plane. He's throwing his bags down to this teenage, 19, 20-year-old kid, 18, 19, whatever he was, grabbing the bags, throwing them, whatever. They were just unloading the plane. Before we start, you have given your word, but I just want to reinforce that I'm giving you this exclusive. You must make sure that this young gentleman who's going to be a star, he's been staying with me for the last 4 months or whatever it was. He's been studying in the US, and he's a young up and coming Australian golfer, and you've got to make sure that that you interview him. And I said, absolutely, Mr. Norman, no problem. So we do that, and then so it comes along, and then this young guy comes up, and he says, "G'day, I'm Adam," and I said, "G'day, Adam," and so we do the interview. Of course, you know who it is, right?
Of course, Adam Scott.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm like, righto, Adam, and so we interview, and I ask questions, and And I go back to my boss, and he says, and it was back in the tapes, and he said, I said, I got him. He goes, great. Goes to rip it out of my hand. This was a guy who was not nice at all. Rips it out of my hand, and I said, for the first time, I sort of stood up to him and he's kind of bullying antics, and I held on to the tape. And I said, I can only give it to you on one condition. And he said, what's that? And I said, I promised Greg and I promised Adam, this kid, that we will put one of his grabs. It's when someone speaks, it's called a grab. We'll put one of his grabs in the story. He goes, nah, no way. I said, well, I can't give you the tape. And I'm holding on to it. And he said, give me the tape. And I said, I can't. I won't go back on my word. And he goes, all right, then you can put one grab in. So I did. So I put one grab in, Adam Scott. So then I then follow this. So then I go down to the Pro-Am, and so that's when they're playing, obviously, with with amateurs who are paid to play. And Greg Norman is on the hole behind me, and he's just done an amazing putt. And so I start doing what's called my piece to camera. If you ever watch a news story, there's always the journalist will stand in the, and talk about something that's called your piece to camera. So I'm doing my piece to camera, and then the cameraman, who I'm looking at behind the screen, starts doing this crazy face. And then I hear this little voice comes inside my ear, and he says, don't beep it up. And I'm like, oh my God, I just stuffed it up. And I turn around. So it's Greg Norman, right? So he laughs and he walks off. He said, oh, well, you have to follow me on to the next hole and do another one. So anyway, we did that. Then the tournament comes and he plays, I don't even think he makes a cut. He plays terribly. And he's walking from the 18th through to the clubhouse where he's going to sign his, and that's where all the journos stand. And so I was standing there with, all the other journos, which they're all the guys. And he walks along and he walks past, and he just ignored everyone, wouldn't speak. And then he stops and he turns around and he looks at me and he said, thank you. Thank you for holding your word. And I said, no problem. I promised you I would. And he said, you can ask me any questions you want. And he gave me, the others sort of jumped in, but he gave me that exclusive in front of all my male colleagues who were, again, because I was the female, blah, blah, blah. And so there you go. In terms of, I can't remember going back to your specific question, but that was in terms of the success. So, I was sent out, but I was sent out on a story that they didn't think I would get. And I got it. And then, through developing relationships and being honest, and, I ended up being able to get obviously more from that story, but I also developed, he wouldn't remember me now, but he might remember the story. But we also got their first exclusive interview with Adam Scott.
Wow.
They wouldn't even know at Channel 7. It'll be in their archives, but they've got it.
What a story. You know what? I'm really touched because I don't know whether you know about me, but I'm a mad golfer myself. I've been playing for over 20 years, so I know exactly the names you're talking about. And because I started my golf when Tiger Woods was making his mark on the world. And I hated golf before that, but through injury, I landed up playing golf. I was a soccer player before that, did my knees in, and that was it. So I thank you. I really appreciated that story, you meeting Greg and Adam Scott.
Yeah, so just developing it, but it's about those experiences along the way. When you feel like you're getting knocked down, you turn it into a positive. Correct. And you look at it and say, okay, how can I build this towards the goal that I want? And the goal often the goal is, the end result is different to what the original goal that you started out with, almost all the time. Yes. Or what format it comes to you in. But so the successful, yes, it's about being in the right place at the right time. And obviously I was in that right place at the right time. It just happened to be that I was sent out, but I then stuck to my word, and I played my part in the role of what that was. And it just happened that he happened to have, Adam Scott with him, and Adam played quite well. But, and, you can build on those. And then Adam and I then met through another friend, and not that we're friends, but we end up going to a wedding. We're at the same wedding, and we end up, going out horse riding with a group of people. And he and I would chat. And I then did, when I worked at ESPN, had an exclusive with him. Because we had fostered sort of, he knew me, and there was trust there. Yes. And and so was pretty amazing to be able to chat to the number one golfer in the world.
Wow, what a story! I mean, you had the opportunity to meet these people, but I think the message is what you did, and you kept your word. You had integrity. That was the key. because if you didn't, and if you had given that tape to your boss, that was it. It was all over. You know, the rest, the story would have
And that was
changed
easier.
completely. And your
And
word,
look, and it would have, and it was hard. I had to stand up to him.
yeah,
But that's all about understanding really who you are, and those moments where you really are challenged is not succumbing to the pressure and actually saying, no,
absolutely.
I'm going to be who I am, and I'm going to stand up for what I believe in.
Yeah. And to me, that is what real winning's all about. It's about standing up for who you are. And that was a very, very huge win.
Yeah, it's pivotal. A
Pivotal for what the outcome was, what for the channel, but in a very different way, because you had integrity and you kept your word. And in fact, Channel 7 actually benefited from that in a very positive way. You got the rights, being the only female.
Absolutely. And I think and I think sort of, winning as well for me is happiness and finding peace.
Yes.
So if I had done the wrong thing, I would have potentially, he may have not have said anything, but I potentially would have had a bit of a clip, some kind of snide remark would have come from him, and it would have been justified, and whatever. But it's just about being happy with the decisions you make, moving on. I know you'll ask me more questions, but, I ended up then walking away from journalism because I didn't, I'd committed career suicide by standing up for what I believed in, and not being complicit to deplorable behaviour that I experienced and I had witnessed, all through most of my career, and having a daughter. But I'm so, while I had to give away things that I loved, essentially it comes down to being happy with the person that you are. And I am truly happy and grateful, and I wake up with a sunny disposition nearly every day. And whereas if I had continued down the path of trying to hold on to a job that really wasn't serving me well, and it was clashing with inherently who I was and the morals that I was brought up with and what I believed in, that's where a lot of people turn to drugs and alcohol or gambling, and are really sad, and depression, and that's where a lot of that sets in.
Exactly, because we've been hearing a lot about your career, but behind the scenes, as you're saying, you've got a daughter. She's 6 years old. Yeah.
Yes.
And you're a single mum. Is that correct?
Yes.
At this stage, yeah. So I mean, there's another side of you that's personal. That in itself is a struggle, trying to raise your daughter, and also your career, and make a stand in life where the worlds that you were in were very male dominated. But you took a stance, and you made a path for yourself, which leads me to what's happening right now. And I want to talk about something that's quite big in the news and in government, and where women are now standing up for their rights for gender equality, inclusiveness, diversity, equal pay, harassments that are going on in life. We know this is not new. This has been going for a long time, but now it's reared its ugly head. It's out there. Things need to happen. What is your opinion on all of this, and how have you experienced some of this yourself through your life?
I've experienced a lot of it. Yes, it needs to happen. Yes, it should have happened a long time ago, but grateful that it is happening now, and that more people are aware and more people are finding their voice, and men and women, and standing up for, equality, and standing against inequality, violence towards women and children. And that, the bystander effect, not saying anything when you see something. I've just voiced a commercial. I'm an ambassador for Our Watch, which is the main body in Australia. Natasha Stott-Despoja is our chair, and that is the main body in Australia that is standing up and speaking out against violence towards women and their children. And, the bystander effect is a big one. And there's so much of that happens in those, in in the, whether it be the media world or, we saw it with the Me Too movement coming out of Hollywood, or, we see it in politics now, wherever it is, it's about, they call it the tipping point, and you probably would know this. And I think once there's 30%, so you've got a group of 10, if there's only 1 or 2 women, things won't change. Once there's 3 or more, then, or of the, the group that's considered the minority group. So it might not just be about women, or it might not be about women. It might be about Indigenous, or it might be about, a multicultural group, or whatever it might be, or LGBTIQ. So a group that's been suppressed because of who they are inherently. And we need to continue not to be complacent, and everyone knows this, but we must continue to speak out. And for those who, someone said to me a couple of nights ago at a dinner, wow, I never thought that this we're talking about was going on I never would have thought that was happening. And he was a great guy. I think he came from a migrant background. He had 2 daughters, smart, intelligent, but I was just sort of like, but I do hear that relatively common. And there's also the younger generation coming through, and it's great. So a lot of the females haven't heard it, haven't experienced this inequality in the workplace or in media. And I've heard that sort of with the new generation coming, the millennials coming through. And that's brilliant.
It is.
Because that means a lot of the work that we did 2 decades ago, over the last 2 decades, is working, and it's, and things are changing.
Correct. Yes. 2 things. One, of course, is the male, the new generation of male are thinking differently. Right? It's generation, how you've been brought up, culture, values, and it passed down. The other side of it, it's come up in politics where, yes, the government might be having more women in seats, but it came across a discussion the other day that are they still being listened to? And that was the thing. And that was a big one. You might have the numbers, but are you just putting them there for the numbers? Are you actually respecting them and listening to what they have to say?
Well, that was what I found. There's that whole saying, diversity and inclusion. You can have diversity and not inclusion, or inclusion but not diversity. Look, I have my view on the media world, and it is changing. But a lot of the men in charge, when they realised they had to sort of, on the back of probably the Me Too movement, they had to engage more women, employed a lot of younger women. And I have nothing against anyone getting an opportunity. But what I noticed is that they wouldn't employ women my age because, it's almost like we know too much, and we will stand up. We will stand up and call out their behaviour, whereas the younger women may not necessarily have the confidence, or just may not have seen it, or may not have the experience to understand it. And some of them do. So, there certainly are those in there that do. But, but you see in media, for example, you see a lot of old, overweight, balding, unattractive men in sport. But it's very hard to find, many women, and I say certainly many as the men are, over 40 or 45. They just won't employ them. And it's there are a couple, because I know they might turn and say, oh, well, we've got such and such, but that's sort of their pin-up.
Yes, I understand. Well, currently, before we started, you mentioned that you now have your own company. And you're involved with Joe Galley, of course, as a part-time ambassador. So can you sort of tell us a bit about that? What's going on?
My time at the moment, I've got raising obviously my daughter, but I have started up during COVID Cherry Picked Productions, which was a name that I'd settled on way back in the early 2000s. But a friend of mine, not Joe, but a friend of mine who's brilliant with computers and data analytics and all the stuff that I'm not, he was switching a lot of businesses online, and they needed content, and he had no idea how to create that. So we combined and we created the Cherry Picked Productions.com.au. So it's all, anything from content to podcasts to emceeing from me to even I've been approached to do create a leadership academy, which I'll talk to you about, Philip, later, away from this, and a couple of documentaries. So just some great media projects. And then I work part-time with Joseph through a very organic conversation on the back of homeschooling last year. We were living in the 5K zone and we were walking, obviously every day I did, and I think he did, taking the dogs, and I was taking Vivian for a walk, and we crossed paths and he said, how's homeschooling? And as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm all about trying to find the positives. And I said, well, it's, pretty bloody hard, but one positive is I think I've potentially caught maybe a reading difficulty with Vivian that may not have been picked up. I mean, I'm not a teacher and I don't know, and I've only got one child, but I know sort of how the system works. She maybe not the kind of kid that would speak up, and she kept sort of pushing books towards me. I knew she understood them, but she was reticent to read them herself, and I didn't know whether she needed glasses or she was dyslexic or she just couldn't, I don't know, whatever it was. And so I made it my goal during COVID to teach her to read, and I broke it down. I bought one book online, but I pretty much did what I remembered and just what felt natural to me, and her reading has excelled. And so I shared that with Joseph, and he said, oh, I'm bringing out this program from Sweden, and it's incredible. It's using artificial intelligence, AI, which I just love, innovation and eye tracking, and it assesses reading ability in 5 minutes at a greater depth than anything that we've ever done. Yeah. So rather than a full week or a full day's assessment, it's amazing. So cut a long story short, I'm now working for them, head of marketing and media for Australasia, and loving it. Yeah.
Brilliant. What a story.
So we're starting out with a pilot program this year, and then launch it. Yeah, we'll launch it in 2022, but it's a scale up worldwide, but it's a startup here in New Zealand. It's it's disruptive, and it will change the landscape of literacy in this country and worldwide, I think.
Wow, Tiffany, Jess, I'm in awe of what you have done, what you have been through, what you are doing, and what you continue to do. And I think the message that I'm getting from you, from my audience, is the fact that your determination is huge, but you also are a giver. You're giving back to society. You're helping other humans out there. I mean, whether it's your physio mentality, you've taken that right through your career. Do you want to finish up on that note, something from our audience as far as a gem that you'd like to leave for them?
Sure. I think, thank you, first of all. It's really lovely when people recognize what you do, but you don't obviously do it to be recognized. There would have been a day and a time, in my younger years, with your ego, you do things to be recognized, but now I do it because I love it and I'm passionate about it. And I think it's about authenticity. Yeah. And and I do try and help people. I've got to be careful that I don't overcommit and take away from my daughter. So there's got to be a balance in that. But I think it's, all of us have a gift in some way, whatever it might be, that we can help others. And if we all help each other, sort of that CSR, that social comes in corporate social responsibility. But millennials and Gen Zs understand it. It's about helping people and giving and experiencing and just wanting to. And when you allow people around you to thrive and to be happy, it enriches your life. Yes. Considerably. So, it's balance is a key. But yeah, don't ever give up. Be authentic. Find what you're passionate about, and regardless of the obstacles along the way, stick to it.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. What an enlightening interview that we've had. I know you're a busy lady. I really appreciated your time. And thank you very much. You have a great day, and we'll catch up soon.
Yes, we will. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.